People magazine just dropped the first intimate interview with Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, ahead of her new cooking show today. Meghan said,
"You need a new villain? Here I am."
One of the worst housewives casting ever. Headline, Meghan Markle's most intimate interview in years. Harry, the kids, and getting real about her, quote, learning curve. So that's going to be attributed to someone, and it is an exclusive. And this is one of the rare times with British royal family reporting that it is in fact an exclusive. And yes, despite not being a working royal, Meghan is a part of the British royal family because she married the son of the king. I know facts can be difficult. One of my first questions I had was whether the writer Erin Hill, who does focus on entertainment and British royal family coverage for People magazine, if this interview was conducted before the original air date of the show, which was in January. It was, of course, pushed back because of the LA wildfires. So I wonder how much of this was conducted then, or if they pushed everything back to coincide with the March release. Basically, what I'm wondering is, are any of these pickup questions? Because if you read between the lines, some of this feels a little like setting the record straight after the Vanity Fair piece, which I know people do not like this. I do not consider it a hit piece. I think calling it a hit piece plays into media coverage and individuals online who gleefully look at it as a hit piece. I think there are weaker areas in that Vanity Fair piece, but I actually think the Vanity Fair piece and now this interview with Meghan, it gives a more well-rounded picture of who the Duchess of Sussex is, as much as we can know because we don't know her. And I think what it generally shows is a kind of boring but realistic conclusion that different people have different experiences with individuals. And some of this definitely gives a different viewpoint of how the Sussexes are settling in their Montecito enclave. What I predict, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see, if it's not already out there in media coverage, is that this People interview is fake, inauthentic, and that somehow the Vanity Fair piece is Bible. I'm sure the fact that there's a source in here that is a friend of Meghan's is going to be brought up as a point of, well, that can't be true. Or that person is just saying that because they were okayed by Meghan to speak with people. Which, like, yeah, welcome to Hollywood. Welcome to coverage of the British monarchy. But yet unnamed sources of employers, people who knew about the couple's projects and the Vanity Fair piece will be seen as fact. My whole point here in comparing and contrasting is that there are shades of gray and that the truth is much more interesting and also not as dramatic as the sun shines out of their ass and it's like working for Satan. But what it really comes down to is which piece supports a narrative that the person reading it believes. That becomes the marker of what is true and what is false. Instead of just looking at something and being like, well, this actually just gives us a broader picture of what's going on here, at least what we are allowed to see. And now we have Meghan in her own words, which is something that we really have not had. Let's get into the piece and some of the things that stuck out to me. First of all, this photo. Who did this to this woman? It looks like it was created by AI. I'm not saying it was, but I don't get it. There are so many beautiful photos in here that I think make way more sense for a cover photo, in particular this one. She's looking over her shoulder. She's inviting you into her world. There's things that you're going to learn. I don't understand why they didn't go with this photo. The piece really emphasizes how Meghan's show is really an extension of her pre-royal work. In 2014, she launched The Tig, which was a blog on food, travel, wellness. Once her relationship with Harry got serious, she deleted The Tig and all of her social media in 2017. She says of that time in this piece, quote, "Well, I loved The Tig, but I certainly love my husband more. So that was a choice I made at the time, and I wouldn't change that for a second." She also says it's been really nice for Harry to see the spark in her eye and some of the work that she was doing while they were in their early stages of dating. This again speaks to the idea that this is not so much a rebrand as it is a continuation of what she used to do. It's also a chance for her children to see her working. And she does talk about moving into that stage of life where she doesn't always have to be in the sandbox with her kids, but she can go into her own sandbox and work on her career and build that up and share it with her children and have her children see her working. Totally relatable as a mom, I might add. You also get a little more inside look into what the show is going to be. It is not a traditional, quote, stand and stir format. What Meghan says about the show is that it ended up feeling so communal, and that's the spirit of the show. The director of With Love Meghan is Michael Steed. He worked previously on the Emmy award-winning show Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown. Here's what he has to say. Quote, everyone has this one version of her, but she's just someone who is hustling and working and doing. I genuinely wanted to create an environment where she could relax, and I know the pressures of what she deals with on a daily basis. I was happy that we created scenes where she could tap into that part of her life. Because people contain multitudes. Also, I doubt this was intentional, but he uses the word hustle, which, as I argued in the Vanity Fair piece, I didn't personally see the use of the word hustle as a negative, because we often see it used in this positive way to basically say, yeah, she works her butt off. We also found out in this piece that As Ever is going to launch with products in the spring. I don't know when in the spring, but I would imagine that they're trying to get them out fast to coincide with the show. Also launching this spring is her podcast with Lemonada Media. So that one person in my TikTok comments that was like, what happened with this? Well, now we know. Projects take time. Long-term projects have a lot of stops and starts and dead ends and backtracking and moving forward in a different direction. That's the process. Most people don't have to do it in front of this kind of public lens. What Meghan says about her journey to creating her brand is that, quote, there are tons of twists and turns, even with the name. I was figuring it out in real time. She then goes on to address the intense public scrutiny at every step and says that this whole experience has been defined by growth. Quote, I appreciate everyone who gave me the grace to make mistakes and figure it out, and also to be forgiving with myself through that. It's a learning curve, end quote. Already, the headline is doing what it's supposed to do, and it's telling us that learning curve is going to come up in the piece, and it will be quoted and attributed to Meghan. It was a very smart way of focusing on the positives, the learned lessons, and the people and spaces that gave her grace. It doesn't call out the insane media coverage, but it doesn't have to. What this article also does is show you that Meghan has this world that she and Harry have created in Montecito. We get a ton about what it's been like settling into Montecito, which I imagine either way, the writer wanted to get a full-fleshed view at what Meghan's life is like, not just the show. But it also reminds you of how little detail we actually got in some of these pieces about miserable in Montecito, where we just generally got quotes about people not liking having them there because maybe they raised home prices, but also maybe that was Ellen DeGeneres and maybe there's more traffic and you have to get like reservations now. I don't know. What I generally hear is they've been good for the economy, but also there's no real concrete proof of that. These are just opinions. But in this piece, we hear a lot more about what Meghan's daily life is like. Connecting with moms and making friends through Archie and Lily, hosting playdates, group yoga classes. She talks about hosting a little winter camp because the break is so long and like, yes, relatable. And she says, quote, we had several days with different families at our home, and we were able to get to know the parents better and all the kids could play. She then goes on to say, but I also know that being part of a community means you put effort into it. So again, very much painting this picture that they didn't just ride into town and act like celebrities, because that's kind of hard to do in a place like Montecito. There are a ton of celebrities. The writer positions this next part as saying, in the process, Meghan says, Montecito has become protective of the Sussexes. Quote, once you know us, I think you want us to have the same normalcy as parents and for our children as they do, despite however unique our situation is. Which, like, yeah, fair. That doesn't mean that everybody loves them or that everyone actually personally knows them in Montecito. She also discusses why she didn't film at her own home. And she says something that makes complete sense. Quote, I wanted to protect that safe haven. And then she goes on to say, our kitchen is where mama just cooks for the family, and with a crew of 80 plus people, that's a lot of people to have in your house. But she does talk about how she brought little touches to the Montecito home that they rented. She says that there is filming of her chicken coop, the garden, and the orchard. She also says that Archie did the filming clapboard, that the kids would visit her on set to see what she was doing. Crew members said that they would give them the headphones so that they could listen to the audio. Not to mention the fact that the landing page of As Ever features Meghan and her daughter Lilibet running through their backyard. These are just my quick top line thoughts about the interview as a whole. I think in general, it was a good idea. I think it was a good idea to go with People magazine, which has had pretty fair coverage of the Sussexes. Nothing is ever perfect. I also don't think purity tests when it comes to huge media outlets are the answer. I think it was an opportunity for her to put forth in her own words what her life is like, what her show is like, without having other people speak for her. I think that's a lesson that both she and Harry have learned through his book Spare and also his court cases. This gets out a different narrative. It gives you a different side to consider. And obviously this is PR. This is Meghan putting forth the version of herself, which doesn't mean it's not her, but that people contain many facets and you do have to protect a part of yourself when you give so much to the public. And I don't mean that in this martyr way. I just mean in general, when you are a public facing individual, celebrity, content creator, what have you. It looks like 2024 was really a regrouping year, a rebuilding year for Meghan. She's hit the ground running in 2025. This is a totally different Meghan than we have seen over the past couple of years. She's on Instagram, got a podcast coming out this spring. Her show launches tomorrow. She's got the brand all set up. Those are actually some massive wins. And while not every project comes to fruition and not every deal works out as expected, it does appear that the Duchess is finding her feet and finding her voice in the media, online. It's going to be an interesting year.